Have you ever heard a story so steeped in secrets, revenge, and betrayal that it seems almost too dramatic to be real? This one unfolds in lavish penthouses and polished boardrooms, where tangled emotions and merciless power plays collide. Meet James Harrington, a millionaire tycoon with magnetic charm and a buried conscience. Standing by his side was his devoted wife, Miranda, whose love quickly turned into heartbreak when a cunning mistress, Clarissa Shaw, threatened to unravel everything. Twists, revelations, and karmic paybacks surged through every chapter, leading to a jaw-dropping conclusion that not even the wealthiest of hearts could buy back. James Harrington was born to the Harrington family in the quiet suburbs of Boston, a family known for its generational wealth in real estate. The Harringtons, originally British immigrants in the early 1900s, had accumulated properties across Massachusetts with diligence and a dose of shrewd cunning. By the time James took over, the Harrington fortune was spread across hotels, high-rise condominiums, and even a small but influential philanthropic foundation. Despite inheriting a comfortable life, James craved forging his own path. Eager to expand the family enterprise, he flew to New York at age 25, determined to transform Harrington and Company into a heavyweight brand. His family's trust allowed him to take calculated risks, and in a matter of 5 years, he doubled the Harrington estate's worth. The press lauded him as a financial prodigy, especially after a fateful meeting at a charity gala with the legendary investor Warren Buffett, who offered James encouraging words about the power of diversification. James was not simply a brilliant businessman. His charm and good looks made him the talk of charity events and business conferences alike. He possessed a smile that promised the world, eyes that seemed to see your soul, and a gentle manner that could disarm skeptics in mere minutes. And yet, he had his share of critics. Some said his ambition overshadowed his moral compass, and that James Harrington was the type of man who'd do anything to get ahead. Little did they know just how dark those predictions would become. When James first met Miranda Carlton, then a rising lawyer at a corporate firm, he was struck by her poise and relentless sense of justice. Miranda wasn't intimidated by his wealth or reputation. If anything, her nose for the finer points of business law made her an even more critical partner. After a whirlwind romance, Miranda left her law firm to help James manage Harrington and Company. They married in an intimate ceremony in Nantucket, where only close family and friends, including relatives from her hometown near Chicago, attended. James thought it was the happiest day of his life, unaware that storms can brew even under the sunniest skies. In the early years of their marriage, James and Miranda made a formidable team. Under the banner of Harrington and Company, they began acquiring distressed hotel chains, renovating them into boutique experiences. They took frequent business trips across Europe and Asia, forging new partnerships and stamping the Harrington name on luxury properties far beyond the Boston skyline. Yet, as James's empire expanded, so did the demands on his personal time. The stress of large-scale investments and high-stakes negotiations caused him to work endless nights, forging new relationships with a social circle who breathed success and worshipped wealth. Miranda tried to remain supportive. She often accompanied him to glitzy events, philanthropic dinners, and real estate expositions, but she felt something shift. The more they prospered, the more James seemed unable to leave business behind, even when the two were alone. His phone was always ringing, and his mind seemed always elsewhere. One evening, Miranda found James on the terrace of their penthouse, staring out at the lights of the city. He looked troubled. When she asked what was wrong, he just shook his head and told her it was business stress. Normally, she'd leave it at that, but this time, something about the set of his jaw and the flicker in his eyes told her there was more than just business on his mind. Miranda dismissed her suspicions. She reminded herself that the Harrington brand was a massive responsibility. She believed their marriage was strong, that they had built a foundation of trust. But in her heart, a tiny seed of doubt began to sprout, a feeling she couldn't quite banish. Clarissa Shaw first appeared on the scene as a marketing consultant recommended by one of James's business associates. She had a striking presence, a mane of dark, glossy hair that cascaded over her shoulders, combined with confident, intelligent eyes. Clarissa was charming, but also undeniably aggressive in her approach. Within weeks, she had impressed James with her bold strategies to reposition Harrington and Company's brand among the global elite. During a strategy meeting, Clarissa presented a new marketing campaign that outlined expansion into European hotspots. Miranda, who still functioned as a legal advisor and occasional board member, found the plan a bit too risky and politely pointed out the legal complexities of real estate acquisitions in certain European countries. Clarissa answered her with a calculated smile and tactful enthusiasm traits that James admired. Soon, Clarissa and James were frequently conferring on campaigns, brand expansions, and often meeting late into the evenings. Miranda noted the changes in the schedule. James began skipping dinner at home, citing urgent business. Although Miranda tried to quell her growing discomfort, doubt returned stronger than ever. She brought up her concerns directly to James, who swiftly assured her that Clarissa was just another sharp mind on the team, but Miranda's instincts were rarely wrong. Late one night, she found James alone in his study, a glass of whiskey in his hand, gazing at his phone. She caught sight of the last text message on his screen before he quickly locked it. "I need you to myself tonight." The sender's name read Clarissa. Shaken, Miranda confronted James. Instead of denying it, he sat her down, poured a second whiskey, and told her, "It's not what you think." He said Clarissa's text must have been taken out of context, that they were discussing finalizing a secret business deal with a new partner who insisted on discretion. Miranda didn't believe him. Her face burned with anger and betrayal. She argued that the text's words were too personal, and she demanded that James prove his innocence. He tried to kiss her, offering appeasing words, but Miranda shrugged him off. Tempers flared, and he ended the evening by storming out of the penthouse, claiming he needed fresh air. Miranda locked herself in the master bedroom, tears streaming down her face. She could not comprehend that the man she had trusted, the man who once declared his love in that private Nantucket ceremony, might be stepping out on her. Over the ensuing weeks, the tension at home grew more palpable. Miranda noticed every suspicious phone call, every hushed conversation. She overheard staff whispering about how James spent late nights working at Clarissa's newly rented penthouse suite, ironically, just blocks away from the Harrington headquarters. The synergy and trust that once defined James and Miranda's business partnership eroded. To distract herself, Miranda immersed herself in philanthropic projects tied to the Harrington Foundation. She organized a fundraiser for underprivileged children in collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, hoping to reclaim her sense of purpose. Yet, no charity event could eradicate the creeping dread in her heart. One chilly winter night, Miranda decided she could no longer live in the shadows of these suspicions. She walked into James's office unannounced, surprising him and Clarissa in the middle of an intimate embrace. James immediately pulled away, his face twisted with guilt. Clarissa, however, stood tall, defiant, and oddly triumphant, as though she'd been waiting to be discovered. That confrontation shattered the remains of Miranda's illusions. She shouted at James about their promises, their marriage vows, and the love they had built over the years. James begged her to keep her voice down and insisted it was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. But Clarissa strolled up calmly, setting a hand on James's shoulder. "I think you need to decide, James," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Either you cut ties with Miranda, or our partnership, this relationship ends right here, and all the projects we have in the pipeline will go with me." Miranda couldn't believe her ears, the audacity of this woman to deliver an ultimatum so brazenly. But what horrified her more was James's hesitation. She saw the conflict in his eyes. He wanted power, money, and the thrilling sense of infatuation Clarissa offered. Miranda took one last look at her husband, then turned on her heel and left, tears staining her face. In the days that followed, James claimed that Clarissa's demand was born of her jealousy, that he didn't truly love her. But that night in the office had laid everything bare. The man Miranda married had changed, and Clarissa had him trapped in her web. Miranda felt betrayed beyond words. She needed to consider her next step, both legally and personally, though she never imagined how complicated it would become. Amid her heartbreak, Miranda discovered a life-altering fact. She was pregnant. She had been so consumed by her suspicions and by the chaos in her relationship that she'd missed the early signs. Confirmation came from her doctor after she experienced a bout of morning sickness that sent her rushing to the clinic. Holding the ultrasound images in her trembling hands, Miranda was flooded with conflicting emotions. Joy for the baby she had always hoped to have with James, fear that her marriage was crumbling, and anger at his betrayal. She debated whether or not to tell him. Ultimately, she decided he had the right to know, despite the turmoil. Maybe this baby could be the lifeline that saved their union. When Miranda told James about the pregnancy, his face lit up with a rare glow of excitement. He grabbed her hands, promising that he would do right by both mother and child. He even swore to terminate his affair with Clarissa. For a few fleeting days, Miranda believed him. It felt like a hopeful new beginning. She saw glimpses of the sincere, loving James she had married. Yet, Clarissa's hold on James was strong, and if Miranda had known just how deep it ran, she might have taken a drastically different course of action. Behind the scenes, Clarissa had brokered a series of deals using James's connections, funneling significant capital into projects whose ownership structures were ambiguous at best. Rumors surfaced that Clarissa was forging a brand of her own, banking on the Harrington name. Meanwhile, James was caught in the middle, desperate to juggle loyalty to his wife and loyalty to his mistress/business partner. Just as Miranda allowed herself to believe that James might choose his family over this affair, Clarissa cornered him in the penthouse after a late meeting. Miranda had gone to bed, exhausted from her pregnancy. Clarissa stormed into the study. "You think you could just walk away from me?" she hissed. "After everything I've done for you, for your business?" James tried to quiet her, but Clarissa was beyond reason. She threatened to expose him for insider trading if he didn't leave Miranda. Clarissa claimed to have evidence emails, text messages, shady offshore accounts connecting James to deals that skirted the law. Whether those claims were entirely true or just an elaborate bluff, James knew the mere hint of a scandal could devastate the Harrington brand. Board members would panic, stockholders would flee, and the name built over generations could crumble within weeks. Filled with fear, James tried to negotiate. He offered to pay Clarissa off to buy her silence. But Clarissa wanted more than money. She wanted power, influence, and the satisfaction of bending James to her will. She wanted Miranda out of the picture. Despite her pregnancy, Miranda wasn't naive. She sensed James's mounting anxiety whenever he was near her. He seemed both relieved by her presence and terrified of something unspoken. Late at night, Miranda would wake to find him pacing near their bedroom window, checking his phone for messages. She suspected Clarissa had threatened him. Though she didn't know the extent of the blackmail, Miranda recognized that Clarissa wasn't just a fling. She was a cunning manipulator who refused to let go easily. It was then that Miranda decided she would protect herself and the future of her child. She secretly consulted her former legal mentor, Danielle Kincaid, a skilled attorney who specialized in high-profile divorces and corporate disputes. Miranda laid out the entire timeline, from Clarissa's introduction to James's betrayal and, most crucially, her pregnancy. Danielle advised that Miranda gather solid proof of Clarissa's manipulative tactics, especially any shady business deals. If the matter went to court, evidence would be her strongest armor, especially with a baby on the way. Miranda returned home with renewed determination. She moved carefully, combing through Harrington and Company's financial records, searching for anomalies that might show Clarissa's involvement. While rummaging through the files on James's computer, she stumbled upon an email chain pointing to secret acquisitions. Shell companies set up abroad with Clarissa's name attached as a partial owner. The trail led to rumored insider deals involving European hotels and even a hush-hush development in the Bahamas. The next board meeting for Harrington and Company was scheduled at their Boston headquarters. Normally, Miranda didn't attend these sessions. her role was more advisory and philanthropic. But this time, she insisted on being present under the pretext of evaluating new legal frameworks for expansions. When James introduced Clarissa as a key marketing strategist, the board members seemed impressed. Clarissa's pitch deck showcased an ambitious plan to rebrand the Harrington properties under a glitzier name, expanding into a global empire that would rival the biggest hotel chains in the world. Yet Miranda noticed how Clarissa glossed over the financial details. She cited broad, sweeping numbers, but never revealed the exact structure of these deals. As the presentation concluded, Miranda spoke up carefully, questioning Clarissa about the specifics. Where exactly will this new funding come from? Clarissa's eyes flickered. She provided vague answers about private international investors and partnerships. Miranda pressed on, hinting at potential legal complications. A wave of unease rippled through the board. Sensing a challenge, Clarissa fired back with defensive and somewhat dismissive remarks, claiming that Miranda was stuck in outdated compliance concerns. The board members, who once idolized James's vision, now looked unsettled, uncertain where all these new deals and expansions were leading. Sensing the tension, James tried to take control of the conversation, only to falter. For the first time, he appeared out of his depth, caught between Clarissa's grand promises and Miranda's pointed questions. At the close of the meeting, Clarissa marched out, stiletto heels echoing in the corridor. Miranda gave the board a small smile, but inside, she felt the growing pressure. She had laid the groundwork for doubt in Clarissa's plan. Now she had to prepare for the reprisal. That very afternoon, as Miranda was leaving the boardroom, Clarissa ambushed her in a deserted hallway. Gone was the polished veneer of a corporate strategist. Clarissa's rage was palpable. "How dare you undermine me in front of the board?" she hissed, her eyes blazing. Miranda maintained her composure. "I'm only doing my due diligence to protect the company," she said, turning to leave. But Clarissa grabbed her by the wrist, surprisingly strong. "Listen closely," Clarissa sneered. "James will choose me, not you, no matter how big your belly gets. And when he does, you'll have nothing. Not the brand, not the fortune, and certainly not his heart." Miranda yanked her arm free. "We'll see," she replied softly, refusing to be intimidated. She could sense that Clarissa was reaching a boiling point, a frantic desperation to secure her hold over James. But Miranda wouldn't back down. She had her child's future and her own dignity to protect. Over the next couple of weeks, Miranda's attorney, Danielle Kincaid, guided her through collecting more evidence. Miranda's quiet rummaging through company documents continued, fueled by her desire to reveal the full extent of Clarissa's underhanded schemes. It was during a routine check of corporate credit card statements that Miranda found an unusual pattern: lavish expenses paid to a small company called Orem Branding. After some digging, she discovered that Orem Branding was wholly owned by Clarissa Shaw. Harrington and Company had funneled massive sums for marketing services that lacked concrete deliverables. Essentially, Clarissa was siphoning funds from the main enterprise to her personal venture, all under James's unsuspecting or complicit watch. This was the crack in Clarissa's armor Miranda had been hoping for. Armed with this smoking gun, she confronted James privately. He squirmed under the weight of her accusations, caught between loyalty to the mother of his child and the manipulative mistress who held potential blackmail over him. At first, he tried to rationalize the payments, claiming they were part of the global rebranding initiative. But Miranda saw the guilt etched on his face. He knew Clarissa had gone too far. "You need to stop this," Miranda said, tears brimming in her eyes. "If you do nothing, you'll lose your family. You'll lose our child. You'll lose everything we've built." James hung his head. For the first time in months, Miranda saw a flicker of the man she once married. Ashamed and desperate to make things right, James confronted Clarissa at her upscale downtown apartment. Tired of the subterfuge, he demanded she return the siphoned funds and step away from Harrington and Company. Clarissa laughed in his face, brandishing a folder of incriminating emails, texts, and business records that she threatened to leak if he tried to oust her. "You think you can cut ties with me and keep your empire?" she said coolly. You'll lose it all in a scandal, James. I'll make sure the courts, the press, everyone knows what you've done." Cornered yet again, James felt suffocated. He thought about his unborn child, about how Miranda stood by him for years, about the Harrington name that spanned generations. He had to make a choice, one that would inevitably break someone's heart. Clarissa's threats carried enough weight to ruin him, but losing Miranda and his child felt like a loss he couldn't bear. He returned home that night, face haggard, and told Miranda he would do whatever it took to protect her and their baby. He admitted he'd made catastrophic mistakes, acknowledging that Clarissa was blackmailing him with fabricated or half-true allegations, but all damaging enough to cause irreparable harm if they went public. He broke down, sobbing for the first time since Miranda had known him. Compassion stirred within her, but so did anger. James had dragged them to the brink. Now they had to find a way out. In an unusual turn of events, James decided to come clean to several key board members about Clarissa's manipulations. He wanted to ensure that if a scandal broke, he and the board had some measure of control over the narrative. Miranda supported him, though she did so wearily. She needed to protect herself and their unborn child above all else. They scheduled a private meeting with 3 senior board members, respected individuals who had been around since James's father's era. During this meeting, James laid out Clarissa's siphoning of funds, her blackmail attempts, and the evidence Miranda had collected. The board members were shocked, but seemed appreciative of James's candidness. They advised a cautious approach, gather more indisputable proof, protect the Harrington name, and possibly orchestrate a settlement with Clarissa to avoid a public scandal. Miranda felt uneasy about letting Clarissa walk away with hush money. Yet she also realized that a prolonged legal battle could be devastating for Harrington and Company. The brand she'd helped grow, and her child's inheritance, hung in the balance. To ensure Clarissa couldn't sink them further, they needed everything lined up perfectly before making their move. Clarissa, however, was not idle. Word of James's secret conversations with the board reached her through an anonymous tip, possibly a disgruntled employee or someone on the board who found Clarissa's new empire tempting. Fearing that her game was being exposed, Clarissa booked a series of one-on-one meetings with smaller investors of Harrington and Company to secure support behind James's back. She insisted that James was steering the company into legal jeopardy, painting herself as the visionary who could save the brand through her global rebranding strategy. Some investors, intrigued by Clarissa's audacity and potential for quick profits, entertained her proposals. She promised them partnerships in new ventures under Orem branding, spinning a compelling tale of how the Harrington brand was old-fashioned and that she was the fresh force needed for modernization. When Miranda learned of these clandestine meetings, her blood boiled. Clarissa was essentially staging a corporate coup, attempting to overthrow the Harrington leadership from within. Miranda realized that if Clarissa couldn't extort James into leaving Miranda, she would try to wrest control of the empire in another way. Weeks passed in a tense stalemate. Miranda's pregnancy advanced. She felt her baby kicking, a constant reminder that time was running out to secure a stable future. James started taking precautionary steps to isolate Clarissa from crucial financial data, revoking her system access and limiting her role in brand decisions. He and Miranda filed a set of official complaints with the board, presenting the evidence of Clarissa's fraudulent billing to Orem branding. But Clarissa made a brazen countermove. She leaked partial documents to a tabloid in New York, hinting that James Harrington was under investigation for suspicious business activities abroad. The story went viral, accusing him of everything from insider trading to offshore tax evasion. The board panicked. The stock prices of Harrington and Company took a noticeable dip, and speculation roared across social media. Miranda and James called an emergency press conference, standing side by side before a crowd of reporters. They denied all allegations and promised transparency moving forward. Miranda took the lead in addressing potential legal ramifications, leveraging her background as a lawyer to challenge the authenticity of the leaked documents. She calmly cited evidence that Harrington and Company had conducted all business dealings through legitimate channels and that any suspicious records were likely the work of a disgruntled former contractor, namely Clarissa Shaw. That night, for the first time in months, James and Miranda found themselves on the same page. Their alliance, though fraught with tension and heartbreak, was more united than ever in the face of crisis. In the midst of this turmoil, Miranda's friends insisted on throwing her a baby shower. She hesitated, feeling that her personal life was under siege, but they convinced her to take a moment of joy in an otherwise grim chapter. The event took place at a beloved waterfront restaurant, famous for its panoramic views of the Boston Harbor. Miranda sat among colorful gifts, baby blankets, and well-wishing friends, trying to smile, but one person was conspicuously absent: James. He had been called into an urgent board meeting that very afternoon to address the fallout from Clarissa's media leak. He sent Miranda a text apologizing for his absence, promising to arrive as soon as he could. Midway through opening presents, Miranda received a phone call from a distressed board secretary, telling her that Clarissa had burst into the meeting, demanding to speak. Clarissa threatened to leak Part 2 of her files, which allegedly contained direct evidence of James's wrongdoing, if they didn't remove him from his executive post. Miranda felt faint. She excused herself, ignoring her friends' concerned expressions, and left her own baby shower. She drove to Harrington and Company headquarters, a swirl of dread and determination fueling her every mile. The afternoon air was thick with tension. As Miranda pulled up in front of the Harrington and Company headquarters, she could already feel the tremors of chaos radiating from within the building. Employees hurried about, their faces etched with worry and confusion. Her heart pounded against her ribs as she strode inside, clutching the folder that could finally expose Clarissa for who she truly was. Upstairs, in the grand boardroom with its panoramic view of the Boston skyline, a storm was already raging. Clarissa Shaw stood at the head of the long oak table, a stack of papers in one hand and her phone raised in the other, as if wielding weapons. James sat frozen a few seats down, his face pale and drawn. Several board members, usually stoic and composed, exchanged anxious glances. "You will step down, James," Clarissa demanded, her voice sharp as a dagger, "or I go to the FBI, the SEC, and every major news outlet within 24 hours. The scandal will ruin your father's legacy. It will bury Harrington and Company so deep, not even your golden boy reputation can save it." James inhaled shakily, about to respond, when the boardroom doors burst open. All heads turned to see Miranda entering, her figure poised, her expression resolute. Without hesitation, she crossed the room, her heels clicking smartly against the polished floor, and slammed a thick folder onto the table. "That's enough, Clarissa," Miranda said, her voice cutting through the room like a whip crack. "Your reign of manipulation ends today." Clarissa narrowed her eyes, masking her surprise quickly behind a smirk. "Oh, look who finally decided to show up," she sneered. "Come to watch your husband crumble." Miranda ignored the jab, flipping open the folder to reveal meticulously gathered evidence. "This," she said, pushing the documents toward the board members, "is an affidavit from our forensic accountants. It details how Clarissa Shaw siphoned company funds through a fake marketing firm, Orem Branding, and forged invoices to steal millions from Harrington and Company." Murmurs rippled through the room. Clarissa's smirk faltered. "You think that matters?" Clarissa spat. "James signed off on every transaction. He's complicit. I have emails, contracts, real documents that prove it." Miranda met her gaze unflinchingly. "Those signatures were digitally manipulated. We have handwriting experts ready to testify that James never physically signed those papers. Furthermore, timestamps and security logs show that those approvals were made without his knowledge." Clarissa's bravado wavered. Her hand tightened around her phone, her knuckles white. She scanned the room, looking for a lifeline among the board members, but found only suspicion and anger staring back at her. "Clarissa Shaw is the one under investigation," Miranda continued firmly. We have already filed preliminary legal motions against her for fraud, embezzlement, and forgery, and if necessary, we will take this matter public with full transparency." Silence fell over the boardroom, heavy and final. Clarissa's mask of control cracked. She looked at James with wide, desperate eyes. "You wanted me," she hissed, her voice trembling. "You chased me. You begged me for help. You can't abandon me now." James rose slowly from his chair, his face etched with sorrow and exhaustion. "I made mistakes," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I'm done being controlled by you. This is over, Clarissa." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, in a sudden, wild motion, Clarissa lunged for the folder on the table. Gasps filled the room as two board members jumped to intercept her. She struggled, but they held firm. "Security!" Miranda barked toward the hallway. Within seconds, uniformed guards appeared, rushing to the scene. Clarissa, sensing her last chance slipping away, broke free from the board member's grasp and bolted from the room. Shouts erupted behind her as she dashed through the corridors of Harrington and Company, pushing past bewildered employees. Miranda and James followed quickly, but by the time security reached the lobby, Clarissa had vanished into the bustling streets of Boston, swallowed up by the crowd. Back upstairs, the boardroom sat in stunned silence. Miranda slowly exhaled, her body trembling from the adrenaline rush. She turned to James, who stood silently beside her, and gave him a single, curt nod. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was acknowledgement. The showdown was over. The war, however, was just beginning. The aftermath of the chaotic boardroom confrontation left a lingering tension that gripped the entire Harrington and Company headquarters. Word of Clarissa Shaw's dramatic escape spread like wildfire among the employees. Whispered conversations filled the hallways. Speculation, fear, and relief hung thick in the air. Within hours, an emergency meeting was called. James, Miranda, and the senior board members gathered once again, this time in a more secure private conference room. The atmosphere was somber but determined. "Effective immediately," announced Harold Stevenson, a longtime board member with a voice like gravel. "Clarissa Shaw is permanently blacklisted from all Harrington and Company properties and operations." Miranda sat straight-backed, her hands folded tightly on the table. James looked worn, his face a map of guilt and fatigue. Together, they had initiated a formal lawsuit against Clarissa, citing fraud, embezzlement, and breach of contract. A restraining order was quickly filed to prevent her from approaching company premises or contacting any employees. Yet the fallout could not be contained so easily. That evening, news outlets began circulating rumors of financial improprieties at Harrington and Company. Fueled by anonymous leaks likely orchestrated by Clarissa in a last, desperate bid to destroy James and Miranda's credibility, headlines screamed of potential insider trading, offshore accounts, and internal corruption. Stock prices took a noticeable dip. Investors called, demanding answers. Despite the board's swift action, the company's reputation wavered under the scrutiny. Emergency meetings with crisis PR teams were scheduled. Lawyers worked overtime to prepare public statements, ensuring every word projected strength without admitting guilt. James stepped in front of the cameras, facing a sea of flashing lights and aggressive questions. Standing at the podium with Miranda by his side, he addressed the public. Harrington and Company acknowledges recent concerns regarding financial transparency. "We have initiated a full internal audit and are cooperating with all relevant authorities. We will not be intimidated by baseless allegations designed to destabilize our legacy." Miranda, composed and sharp, followed with a statement of her own, leveraging her legal background to explain the company's commitment to compliance and ethical operations. She cited the evidence against Clarissa without mentioning her by name, hinting that the source of the controversy was already being dealt with through the legal system. In the boardroom after the press conference, James turned to Miranda, his voice hoarse. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, "for all of it." Miranda didn't reply immediately. The wounds were too fresh. But deep inside, She recognized the monumental effort James was making to right his wrongs. They had survived the first strike, but Clarissa had left scars that would take time and great strength to heal. As the days unfolded, Clarissa's accusations began to lose momentum without her presence and without credible evidence. The media frenzy slowly shifted to other targets. Stock prices stabilized, though wary investors kept a cautious eye on the company. The collapse of Clarissa Shaw's scheme did not just destroy her influence at Harrington and Company. It marked the end of her brief, meteoric rise to power. As the dust settled, it became clear the empire she tried to build on deception had crumbled into dust. But for James and Miranda, the journey to reclaim their lives and their legacy had only just begun. While Miranda was staying with her attorney, a letter arrived at the penthouse, addressed to her. James, not recognizing the sender, forwarded it to Danielle's address, suspecting it might be from Clarissa. Miranda hesitated but eventually opened it. The letter was indeed from Clarissa Shaw, typed neatly on Orem branding letterhead. In the letter, Clarissa offered an olive branch of sorts. She claimed she was leaving the country to avoid further legal trouble, and that she had no intention of pursuing the blackmail anymore. She insisted she had enough evidence to still ruin James, but was choosing not to. She ended with a chilling line, "Sometimes the best revenge is living well. You two deserve each other, but don't think for a second you've won. Karma has a funny way of coming back around." Miranda dropped the letter onto the table, hands shaking. It felt less like a truce and more like a final threat. Yet, as she inhaled and exhaled, she reminded herself that Clarissa had lost her grip on Harrington and Company. Her words were the last attempt to rattle Miranda's resolve. The next day, Miranda visited her doctor for a prenatal checkup. Hearing her baby's steady heartbeat through the monitor brought tears to her eyes. She realized that beyond the corporate chaos and her own heartbreak, a new life depended on her decisions. Did she want to raise her child in an environment filled with bitterness and distrust? Or could she find a path to reconciliation, or if necessary, stand on her own? That night, Miranda allowed James to visit Danielle's home. They sat in the living room, the ghost of their past happiness flickering in each other's eyes. Quietly, calmly, Miranda explained that while she cared for him, she could not overlook the pain he had caused. If they were to build a future together, he needed to earn back her trust, piece by piece. James listened, tears glistening. He promised to attend counseling to rebuild the marriage from scratch, if that's what it took. He pledged to put family first, acknowledging that no fortune or brand expansion was worth losing the woman he truly loved. Miranda watched him carefully, trying to gauge the sincerity behind his words. In that fragile moment, she decided to give him a chance, mostly for the baby's sake, but also because part of her still believed in redemption. They moved forward with therapy sessions, forging a delicate, day-by-day truce as Miranda prepared for childbirth. 9 months into the pregnancy, Miranda went into labor. The baby, a boy they named Maxwell Harrington, came into the world under the sterile lights of a private maternity ward. The moment Miranda heard Max's first cry, she felt a surge of love she had never experienced. James cut the umbilical cord, tears streaming down his cheeks. For a fleeting instant, they were just a normal couple, welcoming their child, the past heartbreak overshadowed by a new beginning. But the outside world couldn't be ignored for long. Right after Maxwell's birth, James had to handle the last of Clarissa's legal aftermath: depositions, evidence submissions, and negotiations with investors spooked by the scandal. Despite the friction, the Harrington name survived. In fact, the brand gained a cautious respect among some circles for publicly removing Clarissa and installing new transparency measures. Miranda realized that James had indeed turned a corner. He was no longer enthralled by high-risk deals or the allure of shady shortcuts. For the first time in his corporate career, he opted for stability and trust building over sensational expansions. Even so, lingering rumors about the affair still circulated. Some business magazines ran salacious headlines, speculating on the Mistress who nearly toppled the dynasty. As Maxwell grew from a newborn into a chubby infant with bright eyes, Miranda felt increasingly protective. She and James considered taking a sabbatical for Boston to avoid the constant scrutiny. The press had taken an interest in the scandal baby, as some tabloids disgracefully called him. Eventually, they decided to split their time between Nantucket, where they first married, and a tranquil villa in Tuscany that had always been on Miranda's travel wish list. The Harrington board granted James's request for a partial leave of absence, allowing him to manage day-to-day business remotely. He appointed an interim CEO, his trusted old friend Harold Stevenson, to handle on-site operations. Miranda felt the distance would help them heal. Away from the corporate sharks and rumor mills, perhaps they could rebuild a life worth living. They took Maxwell to a small countryside chapel in Italy, where they renewed their vows in a humble, heartfelt ceremony with only a handful of close friends. Miranda wore a simple white dress, James a light linen suit. The Italian sun bathed them in warmth, a symbolic fresh start. While Miranda and James were quietly piecing their marriage back together, Clarissa Shaw reappeared in the headlines, but not in the way anyone expected. She had launched a new venture in Dubai, financed by questionable international backers. Soon, rumors surfaced that her operation was being investigated by the authorities for money laundering. Journalists discovered that Clarissa had not retired from her scheming. Instead, she'd attempted to replicate her success by targeting other wealthy investors. A sensational story broke. Clarissa was arrested in Dubai under allegations of embezzlement and financial fraud. Photos circulated of her being led away by local law enforcement, her defiant eyes now clouded with despair. If convicted, she faced potential prison time. One of the American newspapers that once faked her marketing prowess now ran the headline. From corporate mastermind to fugitive, the fall of Clarissa Shaw. Miranda read the article while in Tuscany, Maxwell napping peacefully in a crib near the window. Part of her felt vindicated. This was Clarissa's karma in its purest form. Another part of her felt sadness, a realization that greed and betrayal often lead people down tragic paths. James, upon learning the news, said only she made her choices, and that was the end of it. After 6 months abroad, Miranda and James returned to Boston. They found that public curiosity in their scandal had largely burned out, replaced by newer headlines and controversies. The Harrington brand, while still under careful scrutiny, had stabilized and even thrived under more conservative management. Investors appreciated the new transparency, ironically leading to stronger, steadier profits. When James walked into the Harrington and Company headquarters with Miranda and Maxwell by his side, employees erupted in applause, some genuine, some polite. Their presence symbolized a new chapter, a reassertion of the family legacy without the shadows cast by Clarissa Shaw. In private, James stepped down from his position as CEO permanently, a decision Miranda fully supported. He took on the role of Chairman Emeritus, leaving daily operations to Harold Stevenson. This allowed him more time to focus on family and philanthropic efforts, something Miranda insisted was non-negotiable if they were to remain together. She, meanwhile, took a seat on the Harrington Foundation's board, doubling down on charitable works, determined to use the family's wealth for broader good. With Clarissa behind bars awaiting trial, James and Miranda settled into a calmer life. The brand continued to grow at a balanced pace, avoiding the risky expansions that once enticed James. Instead, they focused on sustainable business models and social impact investments. Miranda revived her passion for law, starting a pro bono initiative for underprivileged communities funded by the Harrington Foundation. She wanted to ensure that the brand's name wasn't just associated with luxury hotels and old money, but also with social conscience and genuine philanthropy. James, now a more humble figure, spent hours with Maxwell each day reading to him, playing, and sharing fatherly wisdom. He admitted to Miranda that he used to think that chasing success at all costs defined him, but nearly losing his family taught him otherwise. He saw Maxwell smile and realized that was the type of legacy truly worth fighting for. Months later, news emerged from Dubai. Clarissa Shaw had been convicted on multiple fraud charges and sentenced to a lengthy prison term. A small statement from her legal team insisted on her innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. The story circulated briefly before the media moved on. Clarissa, once a glamorous marketing guru who nearly toppled the Harrington empire, faded into a cautionary tale. Miranda felt a wave of relief. Though memories of Clarissa's poison still lingered, the woman could no longer harm them. That same day, James told Miranda that he hoped to truly start over with her. To prove his devotion, he transferred half of his stake in Harrington and Company to her name, ensuring that she would always have a say in the family's future. For the first time in a long while, Miranda felt safe enough to trust him again, at least in small steps. The day ended with the three of them, James, Miranda, and baby Maxwell, in the penthouse balcony, gazing at the Boston skyline. The city lights shimmered in the distance. It was symbolic. They had survived the darkest storm, and here they were, still standing, forging a new path together. Life rarely returns to perfect normalcy after such turmoil, but James and Miranda found a new equilibrium. They didn't brush the past under the rug. They acknowledged it, learned from it, and grew stronger. Their love, tested by betrayal and tragedy, now held a depth it never had before. In time, Maxwell would learn of the scandal that nearly broke his parents apart, not as a shadow, but as a testament to their resilience. He would watch them navigate challenges in business and in personal life, gleaning valuable lessons about loyalty, courage, morality, and the enduring power of forgiveness. And when the time came for him to inherit the Harrington legacy, he would do so with a clear conscience, unburdened by his father's past mistakes, and armed with the wisdom passed down from a mother who fought for her family and a father who learned the true meaning of wealth. The Harrington brand continued to flourish sustainably, ethically, and under the watchful, loving eyes of Miranda and James. The family's philanthropic efforts became a cornerstone of their reputation, overshadowing the scandal that once threatened to define them, transforming their name into a symbol of positive change and enduring commitment to community. As for Clarissa Shaw, she was left with nothing but the memories of her schemes and the cold walls of a prison cell abroad. In the end, her insatiable hunger for power and control led only to her downfall. Wealth, influence, and cunning tricks had failed to secure her victory. Karma, as she herself had once warned, indeed found its way to circle back, delivering its just desserts. Sometimes in life, the hardest lessons come wrapped in betrayal, heartbreak, and the looming threat of ruin. James and Miranda learned firsthand that even when everything seems lost, hope can still blossom in unexpected ways, much like the innocent cry of a newborn heralding a new beginning. Clarissa Shaw's ambition and greed scorched everyone it touched, but in the end, justice prevailed. The Harringtons emerged not just intact, but with a stronger marriage, a beloved child, and a renewed, more profound sense of purpose for their brand and their lives. Their story became a quiet legend in their circles, a reminder that true fortune lies not in empires of steel and glass, but in the unbreakable bonds of family and the enduring strength of a love rebuilt. Thank you for joining us on this roller coaster journey filled with drama, intrigue, and a final dose of well-deserved redemption. If you found this story compelling and want to hear more tales of intricate lives and ultimate justice, please like this video, share it with fellow story lovers, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring you more stories that remind us all, no matter how dark the days get, resilience, love, and a little bit of karma can lead us back to the light.